Welcome to the Daba Africa Investment Weekly Podcast. I'm Boom, CEO at Daba Finance, a unified investment platform helping individuals and businesses make high-quality investments in Africa. You're listening to another episode of Daba Africa Weekly, your go-to source for the latest and greatest investment news from the African continent. Each weekend, we bring to you a comprehensive rundown of the biggest stories and trends shaping the world of finance and business in Africa. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, this podcast will keep you informed and ahead of the curve. So sit back, relax, grab a coffee, and join us as we dive into the exciting world of investment in Africa.
After announcing significant private equity fund closes in our previous episode, we lead our top news stories of the past week with exciting investment fund deals. First, Partech, a global VC firm, reached the first close of its second Africa-focused fund at $263 million, making it the largest fund yet targeting the continent's startups. What's more interesting is the firm had intended to raise about $250 million, but overwhelming interest from LPS meant that target was surpassed. Partech will now seek to reach a final close of not more than $300 million. If anything, this further signals a strong investor appetite for opportunities in emerging markets, especially Africa. And in a similar fashion, Vantage Capital, one of Africa's largest mezzanine fund managers, announced the final close on its fourth mezzanine fund with a total of $377 million in commitments secured from European and US-based investors and development finance institutions. Mezzanine financing is a hybrid of debt and equity financing, and more importantly, the increasing number and different forms of capital sources available in Africa is crucial to support the growth of mid-sized businesses that would otherwise struggle to access funding from banks. Moving on, Disrupt Africa released its African Tech Startups Funding Report for 2022 this week and found that investment in Africa's tech startup ecosystem passed the $3 billion mark for the first time last year. One noticeable thing about the figure is that it falls short of other estimates with regard to VC funding in Africa last year. By contrast, Partech estimates African startups raised $6.4 billion. Britta Bridges put the figure at $5.4 billion, and the big deal, $4.8 billion. Regardless of the stark difference, the Disrupt Africa report tells the same story, one of an impressive 2022 in which African startups raised more funding than ever before, despite a global downturn in investments. Flutterwave is launching in Egypt. The Nigerian-born Pan-African payment giant facilitates cross-border transactions in at least 100 different currencies and has received 2 payment licenses in the North African nation, allowing it to operate as an official payment service provider. Valued at more than $3 billion, Flutterwave is one of the most funded African startups. It now becomes one of the few payment service providers in Egypt with both local and global settlement capabilities. For our final bit of major news, Elon Musk's Starlink is forging ahead in Africa. The space-owned satellite internet service has already launched in the continent, debuting in Nigeria this month, and has the approval to set up in Rwanda. It plans to enter more than 20 African markets. We think Starlink's promise of high-speed and low-latency connectivity could boost the region, where only 29% of people had access to internet in 2020. But the obvious drawback is the cost for users. Pricing will determine to what extent Starlink can penetrate Africa.
Dear listener, would you like to get more insights on the investment landscape in Africa? Simply download the Daba Finance application today. You can create a free account and access daily market updates as well as intelligence reports for free. The application is available on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store.
And for our weekly headline roundup, Oracle Credit partners with MyCredit to fund SMEs in Kenya as Nigerian digital bank Umba launches operations in the East African nation. OPEC Fund is backing the African Finance Corporation infrastructure funding with $50 million, while Untapped Global has launched a climate initiative for Africa in partnership with a consortium of partners. On startup funding, Egypt's Gameball raised $3.5 million to scale its CRM platform, and Yodawi, the region's leading pharmacy benefits management platform, raised $16 million in a Series B round, co-led by several investors. Morocco-based Chari and Santa Green bagged $1 million each from Orange Ventures and Norway's Catapult and Catalyst, respectively, while South Africa's Senmark closed a $7 million Series A funding round.
And that's all for today's episode of Daba's Africa Investment Weekly Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this week's rundown of the most notable investment news and trends from across the continent. If you found this podcast useful, please subscribe and share it with your friends and colleagues. Rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcast. We would greatly appreciate it. Remember to tune in next week for more in-depth commentary on the world of investments in Africa. Until next time, happy investing with Daba. The information contained in this recording does not constitute research or recommendation from any Daba entity to the listener. Neither Daba nor any of its affiliates makes any representation or warranty as to the accuracy or completeness of the statements or any information contained in this recording, and any liability, therefore, including in respect of direct, indirect, or consequential loss or damage, is expressly disclaimed. Daba is not providing any financial, economic, legal, accounting, or tax advice or recommendations in this recording. In addition, the receipt of this recording by any listener is not to be taken as constituting the giving of investment advice by Daba to that listener, nor to constitute such person a client of any Daba entity.